welcome back to Pod on the Tyne, or perhaps we should call it Pod on the Tyne 2.0 in recognition of what is now officially a brand new era at St James's Park. I'm Taylor Payne and I'm joined by George Culkin and Chris Woff. George Culkin, how the devil are you, sir?
I'm very much not 2.0. I'm not 1.0. I think I'm just like 0.1. I don't know what this scale this is, but that's how I feel.
Culkin 0.1.
Yeah, that's
excellent.
Very much how I am. Yeah.
Are you due a firmware upgrade? I think that's how I feel at the
software, firmware, all the wares.
All my firmware is now soft, unfortunately. That's how
hardware.
It is. Yeah. Chris Woff's here as well. Chris, how are you, son? You all right?
Yes, well, I thought you Pod on the Tyne 2.0 was in reference to the fact that we are coming to you in HD. Now,
what?
We are on.
Are we filming this?
I'm
not wearing trousers.
Our YouTube launch has gone, typically smoothly. Almost as smoothly as Newcastle United's last few weeks as well. But,
absolutely.
That's another matter.
Well, here we are in a new corner of the internet. Looking for new territories. So this is Newcastle 2.0, and this is a phrase which is being used quite deliberately inside the club, isn't it, George?
It is, yes. Obviously, it's been a long few days. Not just because Chris has been off on holiday, leaving me to man the fort. But yeah, it's very much officially a new era now. It has to be. There's a new head coach, there are new players, there's a new way of doing things, and there's also a new financial reality, which is something that we need to talk about. And as part of this, I've been speaking to David Hopkinson, the Newcastle chief executive. I've done an interview with him for The Athletic, in which he really sort of sets out what this version of Newcastle United looks like. He's taught with great respect and admiration and love for Eddie Howe and what's happened so far for, this era which has seen Newcastle transformed from relegation fodder into trophy winners. But he's saying that there is a price to pay for that. He's talked about the fact that there's now a credit card bill, effectively, which Newcastle have got no choice but to pay, and that is all about compliance with UEFA and UEFA regulations. We know they've been fined. And it's about ushering in what has to become something new and different. And he has spoken in very, very enthusiastic terms about the new head coach and about what will be happening to the club moving forward. And it's a fascinating counterpoint to the air of negativity that there's certainly been if you look at the narratives around the club, losing big players, losing manager, what's going on with the ownership, blah, blah, blah. And he is speaking with great drive and ambition and optimism about the future, and we'll get into this. But he is deliberately using the phrase, this is Newcastle United 2.0.
Well, then let's get stuck into the headlines 2.0 before we go any further. Jaissle, I can boogie. Chris Woff.
Oh, that's a stretch.
If you just couldn't make us, George refused to say his name before because he clearly still doesn't know how to say it. And on the phone to me yesterday when we were chatting about his name, George actually made me mispronounce it because he said it a different way. Anyway, yes, Matthias Jaissle is Newcastle United's new head coach. They have brought him in from Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia, and a lot of excitement around somebody who really, until Thursday last week, I'll be honest, I'd never heard of, and I'm sure many others had not either.
Bruno, captain heads for the exit, George.
Or should that be Bruno go? But yes, so after a lot of claim, counterclaim, media sort of smokescreen, and what feels like Arsenal going through the back door to kind of get Bruno Guimaraes to their club, it feels like there's been movement on this week. Newcastle are now saying that they need a conclusion to this. Bruno turned up to Newcastle's camp in Spain, but it's now pushing very strongly towards a move.
And finally, Hornicek will be our new goalkeeper, and we don't need a pun there, as there's one built into his name. Chris Woff.
Yes, there is indeed. We've trailed all summer, or for several months, that Newcastle United wanted a new number one, and it very much looks like it's going to be the Czech Republic international. Signed him from Braga between head coaches, so before Matias Jaissle had been confirmed and after Eddie Howe had left, but he'd been someone who had been on the radar for a little while. We'd know that that Howard wanted James Trafford for a long while, but instead Newcastle have taken a different direction, and it'll be very interesting to see how he performs.
By the way, I know this is headlines, but it's like I did say on the last pod or the one before that like Newcastle have signed the easiest possible player to turn into a terrorist champ, but this is surely the second easiest.
I mean, it's low-hanging fruit, isn't it?
I'm horny. So there's La Bamba. I'm going to leave a hole just in case Ollie decides to put in some beautiful musical effects. Now we've got He's Horny. Who's their next signing going to be? John Mull of Kintyre.
Good. Yeah.
That was a terrible joke. That was a terrible joke, wasn't it?
Was that a joke, was it? Okay, sorry, I hadn't picked that up. I do apologise.
It's been a long week.
It certainly has. Right then, let's move on, chaps. Matthias Jaissle confirmed. Apologies to those of you who've been waiting intently for this show, including Lizzie on Blue Sky, who said, "What's happening? ? Are you not hearing anything? ? The vacuum is deafening." Scared face with hands on it emoji. Yes, Lizzie, we've all been waiting. George, what was the delay?
Now, the idea of a deafening vacuum is quite interesting. Because surely unless it is a vacuum cleaner, which could be deafening. In the
vacuum of a Newcastle United transfer window, no one can hear you scream.
Yeah, so this has dragged on, of course, and there's obviously been a bit of frustration about that because we know very well that the new head coach. I'm just going to pander to what Chris said about me a little bit earlier. The new head coach is in La Manga, has been in La Manga. He's kind of met all the players and been involved in everything there, but there's been no announcement. And Newcastle do recognise that they have, they've been put in a bit of difficulty by Eddie Howe asking to leave when he did. It wasn't the end of the season. We were already building towards the new season starting, and they've done the same plus a little bit more to Al Ahly. Their season starts very, very soon. It's the middle of this month. Everything they have done this summer has been predicated around Jaissle. How was that? Staying.
You were 75% of the way there.
Brilliant. That's all. No. That's all I've ever. Plausible. That's all. That everything has been predicated around him staying. They've built a squad that's kind of in his image that he's been. That he's been sort of leading, and so this is incredibly inconvenient for them. And so there's been this sense that they, and by the way, Newcastle are paying a big release clause fee for this fella, that they've wanted to kind of get their replacement sourced before they will push the last button and allow Newcastle United to announce. But that's all we've been waiting for. It is that announcement. So it's been frustrating, but there's also been, again, like the other irony about this, of course, is that both of these clubs are owned by PIF. It's sort of astonishing, really, when you think about it like that. But yeah, they've just been waiting for Al Ahly to sign it off finally.
You've been speaking to David Hopkinson this week as well. What's he said about the man he calls MJ? Maybe he needs to borrow Will Asula's glove off him.
He's yeah, everything that David Hopkinson does is fueled by positivity, by optimism, but he is like astonishingly bullish about this guy. They have sifted through, he says, something like 178 names. He talks about their data, and really, really sort of enthusiastic. He talks about him as being a born winner. He talks about him being a rock star. He says this guy is fire. He talks about his energy and enthusiasm. That he's won things, of course, in his young career, but that the ceiling for him, there is no ceiling for him. He says, I've worked with a lot of really great coaches and managers in my time, including Eddie, but this guy is something else. And he calls him transformational. He'll be transformational, and that all of what they've done this summer, we can take away Bruno for a moment, has been intentional. And so, we don't know a lot about him. I think that's fair to say. But they have talked about having a clear set of criteria for what they want from the manager that succeeded Eddie. They've had a succession plan. for Eddie, and he says that again, that shouldn't be seen as sinister. There's one for Hopkinson, there's one for Ross Wilson, there's one for all sort of key personnel at the club, and that he fits every one of those criteria and exceeds them in some cases. So he is not playing down. He is absolutely saying they've got their first choice target and they're ready to go.
I mean, you mentioned before that there's a release clause in place here as well. It's not exactly been done for mate rates, has it? Do we know how much that is?
It's a lot of money. Some of the fees that have been mentioned have been like 10 million euros, 11 million euros. It's not negligible, this amount of money. And, they feel they've got somebody whose career is all in front of him, that he, that he had his pick of clubs effectively, and he's chosen to come to Newcastle, and that was delivering. That it's not like Ali wanted to let him go. Quite the opposite. That he'd earned the right to be very selective about what he did next, and that they've got him. So again, this might. People might be sort of surprised by that or confused by it, bearing in mind that his reputation is not the reputation of someone who's an elite coach right now, who's been working at the highest level. He hasn't. He's won things in Austria, he's won things in Saudi, but Newcastle think that they've got someone who is going to go on to have a very, very good career, and hopefully this next stage of it is with them and they succeed.
We have already recorded an in-depth examination of Matias Jaissle's career and qualities with the Athletic's German football correspondent Seb Stafford-Bloor. That'll go out on our extra time feed, subscription required for that. But here's a little taster, and Seb was pretty effusive about the impact he thinks Jaissle will have on the Premier League.
I think if you think of the Premier League as a big melodrama, and you think of the various characters that you have in it and antics and, fairly strident people saying pretty bold things, I think he will fit in pretty well. I think also he on the touchline, he's a madman, right? Like he's pretty animated and he's pretty passionate. And I think that plays well in the Premier League. He will upset rival fans, because what will happen is, I don't know, you'll score a 94th minute winner and he will celebrate it. And in that very precious way that we all do when we lose football matches, there'll be people who go, it's just a disgrace, isn't it? You just kind of shouldn't celebrate. It's disrespectful. That will happen to him in the same way that it's happened with... He reminds me a little bit of Fabian Hutzler, the Brighton head coach, who very similar personality and a very passionate guy, someone that's really into his football, and doesn't intend to disrespect anybody, but ultimately comes across in quite an affronting way because of some of his antics. So I'm looking forward to Jaissle against Mikel Arteta at the Emirates next season, and let's see who stays in their touchline, in their technical area for longest. But it's I think he'll be an asset to the league in that respect, definitely.
There we go. Seb was really great value on Jaissle, Chris, wasn't he? He does sound like he's going to be a spiky character on the touchline.
Yeah, certainly sounds like he's not someone who's necessarily going to take a backward step. And I think, again, that's part of the criteria of what Newcastle want. This position of head coach for Newcastle, you need to be that public face as well, and so it will not just be in his comments within press conferences, but also the way that you act, and in a different sort of way. You can say that Eddie Howe presented himself like that as well. He didn't take a backward step on the touchline. He wasn't necessarily the most demonstrable, but he had a man stood next to him who was in Jason Tindall. Maybe Jaissle doesn't require to have his backroom staff to do that. I don't know. We'll find out in time. But I do think that it's, if not a requirement, I think it was certainly something which would have been seen as a positive to have somebody like that, because Newcastle... Hopkinson talks about Newcastle being this sort of challenger club, this challenger brand, and about kicking on and moving forward. And that means that you have to have sharp elbows, you have to knock people out of the way, and seemingly Jaissle fits exactly into that profile.
His first game will be Valencia away on Saturday. Chris, you and Ollie are going to be there for Pod on the Tyne 2.0.
I'm indeed. Hopefully I'll be speaking to him before then as well, heading out to La Manga for Newcastle United's training camp, where there is due to be a media day before that Valencia game. So hear from Jaissle hopefully, and it'd be nice to hear from other senior members at Newcastle United if possible. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like media-wise and what exactly we're going to get access-wise out there, but I do think some explanation from the footballing side of the club as to what this means moving forward. Hopefully meet some of the new signings, but then, see him at Valencia. You'll have had the full week to work with the players, even if it hasn't been announced for a full week. He has been there for the full week, and to see any early signs as to what may be new, what might be fresh in what they're trying to do. Bruno-less side, almost certainly, but a team which will Nick Voldemade be in that first 11? Has he been back enough time himself to be in that capacity? What can we sort of gauge from that? And then I think we'll get even more so, yes, the following week at Murrayfield, but then with those back-to-back friendlies at St James's Park in the middle of August, I think that's when we'll really start to see the Jaissle effect and what tweaks and changes he has brought to the style that Newcastle are going to play.
Jaissle ball. It doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, that, does it?
I was going to try and say the German for that, but I don't know what the German is, so...
I think it's exactly the same, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it is, yeah.
I think it will be, yeah. To put a couple of umlauts in there somewhere, that'll do. That's enough. Right then, Hornicek signs Newcastle United with their first choice goalkeeper for the new Premier League season. Lukas Hornicek is our man, George.
Yes, he is, as Chris says. A new first choice goalkeeper has been one of the big priorities for this summer. Obviously, we know that James Trafford was their number one target for a long time, but they've got their man, and that means that there will definitely be one new face in the team at the start of the season. We don't know where the other four signings will figure yet, but it feels like the right time. It is a club record signing for a goalkeeper, taking over from their previous record signing for a goalkeeper, the lesser spot. I'm not even going to say his name either. I'm just going to call him the Greek fella.
The Greek fella.
Vlachodimos.
Yeah, I couldn't remember. That was the truth. Who, of course, has had a storied and fabled career at Newcastle. Oh no, hang on. But yeah, and so we would therefore expect Nick Pope to leave this summer too, albeit Jaissle will have his own view on goalkeepers and what's happening.
By the end of the show, you might actually get the
no.
Well, all three of us can pronounce it differently, like we do with Bruno Guimarães and Joe Linton. We all pronounce those differently. All three of us.
I'm going to call him MJ. I'm going to do what
go with MJ. Yeah,
David Hopkinson does. He calls him MJ. I'm calling him MJ.
Absolutely. Fair play. Chrissy's been signed from FC Braga in the Portuguese top flight. I wonder how he's going to adapt to the Premier League. It's quite a jump, that, isn't it?
It is quite a jump. I mean, for anyone who's seen the sort of any clips of him or seen the videos of him arriving in Spain to meet with the new squad, he is a big lad. He's like 6'6". He's physical. So I think in that regard, he looks ideally suited just physically, and I think he fits a lot of the profile of what Newcastle were looking for and want from a keeper. It's not as if he's come in from a club who have been dominating A, the Portuguese league, or B, European football, but Newcastle think that they are signing one of the best young keepers, and by young, I don't mean quite as young as the other young keeper they've already signed, in Ewan Jawan, who is obviously signed as a 20-year-old and seen as one of the next best things in the next few years. That Hornicek is ready to be that now, and that they have almost jumped the queue a little bit. A lot of other clubs, I mentioned this in a previous podcast a good few weeks ago, that last summer there was a lot of movement of younger goalkeepers in the early to mid-20s, and so not as many clubs necessarily have needed a goalkeeper or thought that they've needed a goalkeeper this summer. But of the ones who theoretically hadn't moved to a bigger club yet and were available, Hornicek is someone who Newcastle seemed to really admire and liked. And as I said, that admiration was there pre-Howe leaving. Whether the pause in the deal happening because it looked like it was going to progress, then the sort of Howe news broke, and then happened after that. Whether that was to do with Howe basically not wanting to have the final say on a signing, which by that stage he knew he wasn't going to be dealing with, or what, I don't know the full ins and outs, but Newcastle clearly had so much confidence within him that even before Jaissle was finalised, Hornicek is signing. And so I've said it before, I just think, as much as I think that some of the comments about Nick Pope are now disrespectful and fail to really take into account how good a goalkeeper he has been for a long period of time for Newcastle and how important he was in the rise and the success. There was a definite downturn last year, and arguably maybe even the parts of the year before, a couple of injuries he's had, and now it's almost the feel around him within St James's Park that there needed to be a new feel with a new goalkeeper there. And so first impressions are huge with goalkeepers. Pope did very well early on. Martin Dubravka, obviously that game against Manchester United, but just generally, and I think if Hornicek can start well in that Liverpool game, then hopefully Newcastle can have a lot more confidence, or the Newcastle fans can have a lot more confidence in the person who is between the sticks for them.
Do we think that it is likely that Nick Pope leaves, George? I mean, is there a chance that he may stay? He could always use his experience around the squad as well.
Well, I think they've signed Ewan Jowan as their number 2 goalkeeper. I mean, I think that was the sort of promise given him, or that's certainly what he was told. And so in that sense, I would be surprised at this point. And I think at this point of Nick Pope's career, he would feel that he's still got something left to give in the tank as a number one goalkeeper. But again, I think. As Chris says, that sort of with Eddie Howe there was this feeling that, it would be very difficult for Nick Pope to start the season with the goalkeepers that they had last season. There needed it to be this freshening up, but the unknown. And I would be very surprised if this deal hasn't been sanctioned at least, with a nod and a wink by MJ. So, but he, of course, will have his own opinion. So we're making a lot of assumptions about the squad and the players that Newcastle have at their disposal. But the new man will see it as a clean slate, a fresh start. And so players who may previously have thought they were on the way out, he might have a different view of those players. We saw what Eddie Howe did with the squad that he came into. Yes, they signed lots of players in that first January window, but look at what happened with people like Fabian Schär and Joe Willock and others who were at the team at the club at the time. They really raised their levels, and so maybe some of those players also get the same sort of chance under the new man. I mean, that's always a possibility. So it's difficult to sort of leap to conclusions. He might be saying to everybody, you've all got a chance to start the season. It's up to you to prove your worth. Go out and show me who should be doing it. So I think some of the assumptions that we've had this summer about who stays, who goes. I mean, the other thing, Hornicek is, as Chris said, Hornicek is 24. He is the first player they've signed this summer who is over 20. I mean, that is pretty remarkable. Really. And again, in the sort of old regime, the feeling was that amongst the other 4, none of them were ready, would be ready to start the season. But MJ might have his own ideas. It might be, no. If they're good enough, they're old enough, they're good enough. I think he's ready now. Let's do it. And so all of these things are really up in the air, aren't they?
They certainly are. We mentioned this at the top of the show before, but Martin on Blue Sky said, I'm looking forward to George Caulkin singing I'm horny, 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 horny on the pod this week. Did he actually? I'm not sure if I'm going to sing it. He mentioned it, though. It's almost like we're incredibly predictable, isn't it, with what we do on here? But there you go. Let's move on to the other big news story of the week. Bruno Guimaraes, of course. Luke in Toronto got in touch to say, in light of what is happening to our squad, I'm scrambling optimistically to try and find any shred of positivity to lift the gloom. Bournemouth lost Kirkez, Zabani and Huysen in one season, and they qualified for Europe the season after that. Unfortunately, I don't think we'll be aiming for Europe this season when Bruno eventually departs. Maybe thinking back to the days of relegation scraps. Thanks for keeping me sane during this period of utter turmoil. Are we keeping? I can't even say it, let alone do it. Are we keeping people sane? My God, that doesn't feel right. I've had a couple of messages this week along those lines of people saying, "Thank you so much for the pod. It's really sort of helped calm us down." And I think you want to try listening to it when we're recording. Fucking hell. Maybe it's an absolute mess. Maybe we're actually the voice of insanity. And we're all insane. I don't know. Well, the skipper reported for duty in La Manga, but he appears to be getting even closer to his move to Arsenal, Chris, doesn't he? And now this feels like a potential pod bomb, doesn't it?
Well, it does, other than the sense that we can say that David Ornstein, our colleague at The Athletic, has now reported that Newcastle and Arsenal are moving close to getting a full agreement in place for Bruno Guimarães to move, and then that would facilitate him to leave La Manga, go to London and have a medical before moving to Arsenal. And as George mentioned at the very top, this was something that really couldn't drag on any longer. That rather than have an Isak-like situation where you wait until the very end of the window and can you sign your replacements, at least there will be some sort of finality about this. It's not the scenario or outcome which really even a fortnight ago those at Newcastle were talking about. I'm not going to try and pretend otherwise. I'm not going to try and rewrite history. The strong message up to 10 days, 2 weeks ago was that Newcastle were not going to be bullied into a situation where Bruno Guimaraes would go for less than what was seen as an irrational fee as it was being put. Now, Newcastle are still going to get a very good fee for Bruno, but I don't think it's going to be quite at the level that maybe thought of previously, and that's partly, I think, to lance the boil, for want of a better term, or to sort of get that sorted in that regard. Clearly, I think it's also in Matias Jaissle's. Now I'm saying it incorrectly.
Brilliant.
Excellent.
There we go. That's
clearly
karma, baby.
It's in Jaissle's interest for it to be sorted as well, and maybe, and I'm speculating here, but maybe he's also said, yes, I'd like that resolved, just rather than even try to reintegrate him. If he doesn't want to be part of my plans, I have that clean slate, and I think it's easier for him to do that than it would have been for Howe. He was Howe's captain. Howe had made him captain. He was Howe's signing. He was Howe's player. Jaissle hasn't played with him before, so in terms of losing him, yes, he'll know how good a player he is and what he does bring to this Newcastle side, but he can have his new ideas. He can start it in a fresh way. The transfer window is still open, so players hopefully can be brought in to try and at least try and compensate for that. But I think that once Howe went, as we mentioned on the Howe Farewell podcast, it was close to inevitable that this was going to be the outcome. And actually, I think with Howe going, it does make it more straightforward for everyone that Bruno also goes as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have to sort of reiterate that point that when they did the Anthony Gordon deal, they got more than they actually expected from that deal from Barcelona. They did it very quickly. They did it clinically. It was on their terms as well as Barcelona's and Anthony Gordon's. Similar with Sandro Tonali, they recognise what they were losing, but they got a fee that could rise to £100 million. I mean, they got a really good fee with it for him, and it was done again. It was done on their terms. This has not been done on their terms because they didn't want it to happen in the first place. Like, they know how important Bruno is. You know, there was that sentiment at all times. He's worth more to us than he is to Arsenal. But you know, sometimes you have to deal with the hand that you're dealt, and you have to respond to events. We saw what happened last summer and how it dragged on, and in the end, Newcastle got an incredible fee for Alexander Isak. They weren't able to spend it in the way they would have wanted. They weren't in control of that situation. It turned very toxic. It became contentious, and then the entire season felt like a hangover from all of that. The mood, certainly over the past few days, has been, we don't want that. We need to bring this to an end. The word melodrama has been used to me in conversations. We need to conclude this. We need to find a way of getting it done. I think there is general puzzlement and frustration with the way Arsenal have kind of gone about this.
Yeah.
But there has been a real mood of, you know, first choice, you keep him. He's your player. He leads this refresh. He leads Newcastle United 2.0. If for whatever reason that is not going to happen, then let's just get it over with as quickly as possible. And I think that's been the feeling over recent days. We have to point out, though, that he is a huge loss. He is the heartbeat of the team. He's the emotional thrust of this team. He's driven the team. We know that Howe's Newcastle has not been able to win Premier League games without him since he's been here. He's brilliant. We love him. It's another little bit of heartbreak, and it's not at all what Newcastle United wanted. But rather than allow it to drag on indefinitely, they've tried to push and make it happen.
And for the sake of argument, let's assume he is leaving. We are trundling towards that happening. Do the club, Chris, have a succession plan in place for our most important player? And most importantly, probably as well, our captain.
I mean, it depends what you define by a succession plan. Newcastle have players they want to sign and want to bring in to potentially replace Bruno, but I don't think... I think saying succession plan makes it sound like somebody is going to seamlessly come in and do exactly what he does, and I think that is borderline impossible for a club in Newcastle's position right now, financially, in the situation they've been in this summer, to do. I mean, Howe spent 5 years not really being able to find a solution for whenever Bruno Guimarães wasn't fit, because he was that important to what they do, and that's part of the reason why they wanted to keep him. But they do have alternative players they like. They have alternative solutions potentially within their squad as well, and it could be that this is multiple players who arrive. Sean Stewart, I think longer term, a lot of the characteristics he has are seen as potential to replicate, or at least to compensate for a lot of what they'll lose with Bruno Guimaraes going. But yes, Newcastle are going to sign players to bring in to succeed, replace Bruno Guimarães. But is that a succession plan? I wouldn't necessarily say it's Bruno goes. It's different on the head coach front. Again, you're still going to bring in somebody different. But when they talk about having the succession plan for head coach, CEO, I think that's very different to having a succession plan for a unique talent like Bruno, particularly in the position Newcastle are in. It's more difficult to acquire them. So yes, players will be signed. Yes, the team is going to look very, very different, because it has to look very different. A, because there's a new head coach, but B, because of the personnel. It almost feels churlish to bring this up as a point to a certain degree, but the amount of times in the spring and early summer where I'd mentioned on this podcast or written that there's going to be significant change at Newcastle this summer, they talk about like rebuild, and you get pushback from certain people inside the club saying, well, you keep talking about this, there's going to be significant change, and looking at it has turned out to be this way, but it was going to have to be regardless. But particularly now that Howe's gone and unforeseen sales beyond the sales that Newcastle actually wanted to make, that means that yes, this side is going to be very, very different.
The way it was put to me by someone involved on this side of things is that succession plan, yeah, maybe that's not the right phrase, but they have lists of players who can fill every position, and they do have this sense of planning. Like I said at the top, there's a succession plan for Howe. It doesn't mean you can, it doesn't mean you'll necessarily get your first choice to replace Eddie Howe or whatever. There's a succession plan for David Hopkinson. It's more about what they would like to do, players who have the same sort of profile or a similar profile or could do that role. That plan was not being aggressively pursued in the days leading up to Eddie Howe's official departure, because even at that point there was still hope that that Bruno ends up staying. And of course the other problem with the succession plan is that if you try and get ahead of the game and then you found a way of keeping Bruno, you've kind of wasted time. Also, you don't necessarily want to alert Bruno or Bruno's agents that you're looking that you're looking for another player, because then it's all of those things are kind of fraught with difficulty. But they do have a list of players, and those plans are now being aggressively, actively looking at. They have players, and who they get, we'll have to see. The other thing to say about this is, when you talk about him, Taylor, as the captain, that is something that they are and have been acutely aware of this summer, that they are losing experience. Kieran Trippier's gone, Tonali's gone, and an established Italian international. I'm not saying he's one of the leadership group at the club, but like losing a lot of experience in Gordon too. And if Bruno goes, you're losing the sort of the biggest of a lot. And it's something they know about. Not all of their signings this summer can be 20 years old. They know that they have to get some established players, and that becomes magnified if and when Bruno goes.
Step forward, Dan Burn, and put that armband on, son. It's your birthright. Anyway, the other part of Newcastle 2.0, it's not just as important, George, this, is it? It's an absolute necessity, and that's the financial sustainability of the club.
I mean, that's it. I mean, it is that sense. I mean, I talked about the credit card bill. That is something that, David Hopkinson has talked about to me. He sort of said, he was called in front of UEFA to negotiate and to come back to compliance, to explain himself, to negotiate the terms of the fine, to sign up for a remediation plan that gets you back into compliance. Like, there's nothing they can do about it. Now, he admits, these aren't the rules he wants. This isn't the rules that PIF wants. And are they unfair to a club like Newcastle? Yeah. But so what do we do? Once we've said that, what do we do about it? And there's not a lot they can do at the moment. And so what happens is that there's been this sort of boom and bust at Newcastle. They spent a load of money at the start. They almost breached PSR. There was that sort of austerity where they didn't sign. They brought in a shit ton of money for Isak, but then they spent even more. and their wage bill has gone up. And the way he put it is that effectively they've had a wage bill and spend that befits a club that's in European competition, that has been prepared for the Champions League, and they are no longer in the Champions League. Once that became obvious it was Newcastle weren't going to get into Europe, that's when they started pushing for the Gordon deal. The really kind of galling thing about that is that Anthony Gordon has made them compliant. It's not like that left them with loads of money left over. And although, you know, they took the decision to sell Tonali, it's that can then get reinvested. But they're in, you know, they've been in a really difficult position. I mean, to absolutely clarify, Hopkinson is not blaming anybody. I mean, he says that, you know, the first iteration of Newcastle post-takeover has been glorious, it's been wonderful, no regrets, like it's brought Newcastle a trophy, but they can't keep doing what they were doing because they were going to get fined, they were going to get points deductions in the Premier League if they kept going this way. You know, they won't if they breach UEFA, if they don't fulfil their obligations to UEFA, they won't be allowed to compete in European competitions, and so they have to do it differently. So they have to trade, they have to get their revenues up. You know, that's all part of it, of course. So, and you know, his phraseology, it's very clear. It's the 3 C's. Newcastle have to be consistently and credibly competing, and so there's this financial reset too. It's like, if we have to trade, be better at trading, so be it. They cannot do what they were doing and get to where they want to go. And I mean, this stuff is words, of course. So, but he also talks about, you know, PIF remaining absolutely committed, that they're driving this reset as much as he is. More news soon, he says, on infrastructure stuff that needs to happen, but they just can't carry on as they were. And so he won't accept that this is a backward step. He says that this is a pivot. Chris will like that, and it's it's a pause and a pivot, and it's then kind of going again. But let me read you out a quote. We are pivoting in line with our reality, but we will surge forward from here and get into a position where we can win consistently. This Newcastle United 2.0 team will be young, hungry, ambitious, relentless. They want to be here, and they will fight for everything. This is exciting. This is transformational. This is intentional. Let's go.
Oh, it sounds very lovely, doesn't it? Oh, sounds great. I think I'd quite like to pivot away from my reality at the minute, if I'm being completely honest. But there we go.
Well, I mean, we'll all be able to judge this quite soon. I mean, when the football starts. I mean, he also says that, you know, there are going to be bumps in the road. Like this, if this is a young team, it's a young coach. They don't know the league. A lot of these players, so it's going to be different. You know, it has to be different. But and you know, he needs everybody's support. But it's also that sort of idea of Newcastle United against the world, which I like as a sort of identity. I like the idea of young, hungry. You know, that this hasn't been a new team for a long time. You know, and so. I know I'm giving off an air of cynicism here, George, but I'm kind of done with words now. Do you know what I mean? I want to see some stuff happening, and I know you mentioned earlier on there's news coming about infrastructure and all of that. Yeah, I've heard it loads of times. It's been kicked down the path so many times now that I'm kind of fed up with it, and he says that. You know, if you've got something to do it. Just let's get on with it, please, because I'm getting tired of it all now. Yeah, but Taylor, I mean, I think this is really important. He knows that. I mean, certainly in terms of infrastructure and stuff, he absolutely knows that. So he kept his comments about that to one sentence. More to come, but that's for our next conversation. Okay, more to come soon, but that's for our next conversation. And so he knows that. And I mean, we will see what happens when the season starts, and then moving forward. And it is only words. You're right, but I mean, it's only words, but it is also the appointment of a very young manager, and it is also the recruitment of some very young players. So this idea of what they're doing, you know, I think we can see the reality of that. Whether it works or not, whether it's immediately successful or not, we definitely will want to see. But we'll definitely see soon enough. But I think it is really important that somebody has stepped forward and articulated what this plan is, what this idea is, because there hasn't been any of that. It's been left to Eddie Howe to sort of try and explain what's going on or not going on and things like that. And of course, he hasn't spoken very much over the summer until pre-season started. But at least now there's this idea taking shape of what this Newcastle United will look like. I can't tell you whether it'll work or not. David Hopkinson can't tell you if it'll work or not. He passionately believes it will, but he can't tell you that it will. You know, the proof to all of that will come very soon. But I do think it's important that, you know, MJ wasn't left in Germany and he's the first person to articulate a vision of what this Newcastle is going to be moving forward.
It's a good job he wasn't left in Germany because they're in Spain at the minute. I mean, he's from Germany, but yeah.
Is that what I said?
Yeah.
Right. Newcastle United, George Culkin 0.0.
Potato. It's not important. Right then, let's move on, chaps. The lasses are motoring on. We're seeing a relentless recruitment drive for that women's team. Incomings reach double figures with a distinctly Celtic feel. We can't cover them all, so apologise, but recent headlines. We wanted a striker, and we got a load of them. Scottish international forward Martha Thomas, the latest to sign, joining from Spurs, who finished 5th in the WSL last season. Molly Lambert brought Newcastle hearts with an injury time winner for Durham, but she has rejoined Newcastle, having played in the development side a decade ago. Man United goalkeeper Kayla Rendell joins on loan as Femke Liefting returns to Chelsea. I had a go there. I was really close, and then I just tripped over at the last second. We've also got a new contract for captain Demi Stokes as well, and there have been some significant departures. Irish forward Emily Murphy joins WSL side Brighton, and Polish centre-half What
has happened to Newcastle United? Like, what has happened? What has
probably
happened?
In search of
why
playing
can't
time
why can't they
and
just
a dictionary.
Why can't they
Fucking
just
hell.
sign people called John or Bob or
Joe Blows.
Joanne or like
Emma Kelly? I can
Emma
pronounce
Kelly.
that fine. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's going on?
Anyway, WSL 2 fixtures are released. 4 of the 9 home games will be at St James's Park, including 2 games against local rivals Durham and Sunderland in March. George, I think it's fair to say they're going to have to fit an awful lot of players in now. There's going to be a lot of adjustment needed.
Well, I mean, this idea that there might be a sort of consolidation period after what happened last season, which of course was huge change on and off the pitch, and then not quite making it, you know, not quite getting where they wanted to go and getting promoted. The idea that they may take a pause and consolidate after that has just been absolutely blown out of the water. I mean, it's like my phone has been going every single day, it's felt like, with a new signing coming in or someone leaving or more change. And I mean, it's definitely ambitious. They're signing some really good players, some names that we kind of heard about, and you know, again, the decision to kind of put 4 games, almost, you know, half their matches, home matches at St James's Park, is a big show of faith. It's a big show of ambition. I think those things are kind of interesting, because what you want to have is a balance of there being a good crowd, and so at Gateshead you've got this kind of family atmosphere and it's great and it's sort of beginning to feel like home. What you don't want is a half-empty stadium at St James's Park with loads of empty seats in it. But it's a show of faith and saying, okay, here's the challenge. Let's fill St James's, and this is, you know, that is their home as much as it is for the men's team. I mean, so yeah, absolutely. You know, kind of seen some news recently about Manchester United again and their head coach leaving and what is their ambition there. But like with Newcastle, this is, you know, it's absolutely powering forward. It's not, they have not taken a breath. They've absolutely pushed and pushed.
Right then, that's just about it. Thank you very much for your time, chaps. Chris, you got anything to add before we wrap up?
Just that, yeah, I think that as destabilising as this summer has been, and none of us wanted a third successive summer of so much change, so much upheaval, so much uncertainty, it's reached a point now where the season is little more than a fortnight away, and hopefully there will be something to build from now, excitement, or at least a clearer idea of what this Newcastle is going to be moving forward. That vision has been outlined by David Hopkinson. As George said, the proof will come in time. But now that Jaissle is in position, now that there are some signings through the door and more are going to have to follow, need to follow, so there's going to be more readjust moving forward. But at least we know now what to expect from personnel moving into the start of the season, and now it's what is this version of Newcastle. And I think that freshness offers something slightly different. There was maybe something stale at the back end of last season, and that was the concern. A lot of that there, that if Eddie Howe was going to continue, that is it really a full reset or refresh or whatever you want to call it? Can it be Newcastle 2.0 when Eddie Howe is still there? Possibly not. Possibly it needed the full change that is there, and that was for better or for worse. That is what has now happened, and we will see in the coming weeks and months whether Newcastle can actually have a successful 2026-27. Whatever we think successful looks like, I'm sure everyone listening to this will have a slightly different idea as to what success would actually be for Newcastle this season.
Sure, we'll all be watching that Valencia friendly with bated breath. And you're off to Spain, aren't you, Chris? You got your trunks packed?
Trunks packed, factor 50, Hawaiian shirts, flip-flops, just general Britain abroad. That'll nice. Definitely be me.
Pint in the Red Lion, full English. There we go. Lovely stuff.
That's
what we like to see.
It's the shock of the new, isn't it? And I think that's how it sort of feels a bit to me. It's like, what is this? We don't know what this is going to feel like. We don't know how it's going to work. The shock of the new, by the way, is a phrase about modern art. It was a documentary about sort of modern art, and like suddenly how something happens, and it's like, what is this thing we're looking at? And it feels a bit like that with Newcastle. We don't know, we don't know whether they're going to be any good. And I think like that is the sort of scary thing, that like it's not established player. These aren't established players. It's not a manager who's established in a big league. Newcastle have lost a lot of their touchstones. I mean, with Bruno going, with Howe going, it was like there was always this sense of security. It's like, we've got this manager who knows us, who cares, who has, not everything that he's touched has turned to gold, but it was like he was reassuring. And Bruno's the same. Like once he's on the pitch, that you're going to get everything from him, that he was going to lead the team. All of that is gone. And so, I mean, is it exciting? Is it terrifying?
I'm terrified, George.
I'm
absolutely terrified.
Yeah,
I need to be held. I feel like I need to be held at the moment.
I'll do that. I'll do that for
brilliant.
you. But
there's a lot.
But as Chris says, it becomes something. There's no compromise now with that idea of newness. I mean, Newcastle haven't lost all their established players. They've lost all their coaching staff, and there's a new coaching staff there. So what happens next is fascinating, and whatever it is, we have not seen it before.
Fair play. Right then, let's wrap things up. podinthetyne.supportingcast.fm is where you can pick up a subscription to listen to our Extra Time feed if you want to listen ad-free, or you can also get additional content for a little bit extra money as well. Check that out. And thank you very much to anybody who's watched this on YouTube for the first time as well, or consumed it via YouTube. And thank you to George Coggan for wearing trousers. That is much appreciated. And thank you, Chris Waugh, for not wearing that horrible sleeveless Ghana training shirt that you've got. Nobody needs to be subjected to that in HD, do they? Let's be honest.
There's a special subscription service to that if you want it.
It's called OnlyFans.
There's a special subscription setting in which Chris just sings, "I'm horny, 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 horny."
You can email us a question to podonthetyne@gmail.com. And as always, the Q&A thread for our subscriber Discord server will be open for entries. If you are a subscriber, check your email inbox as well. There should be an invite to that Discord on there. We still have an account on Twitter at X at podonthetyne, and we are more active over on Blue Sky though at podonthetyne.bsky.social. And we're now on Instagram as well at podonthetyne podcast, and TikTok at podonthetyne. All of the social medias you could possibly need. You can get Chris Waugh in high definition right across the varying medias. There you go.
With or without a sleeveless top.
Preferably without. Thank you very much, chaps, for your time. Thanks, George Corgan.
See you later.
And thanks, Chris Waugh. Bon voyage. Have a safe trip.
Thank you very much. Yes, I shall report back from sunny Spain, almost certainly looking like a tomato, but hopefully having heard from Jaissle Or MJ, whatever you want to call him. I'm not going to call him MJ. I just can't do that going forward. No, definitely not.
Fair play. Thank you very much for everybody at Pod on the Time. Thanks for listening. Take care, and we shall speak to you very, very soon. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Pod on the Tyne on YouTube. Our main show will be here every week, so please like the show, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell to get a notification when the latest edition goes live. For more from us, including Matchday Reaction, check out our podcast, available in all the usual places, which you can also listen to ad-free through our subscriber service at podonthetyne.supportandcast.fm. You can also stay up to date with us through social media. We're at Pod on the Tyne on X and TikTok, at Pod on the Tyne Podcast on Instagram, and at podonthetyne.bsky.social on Blue Sky.